We have 2 members online. And so with the 2 members online, we have Councilmember Horland and Mayor Brunson online with the 3 of you present. Mayor Castillo had an emergency at the city and is unable to attend this morning. And Mayor Levy has requested an excused absence also.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, let's call this meeting to order. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
So, Ms. Blake Boy,
Thank
please
you.
start.
So just before we begin, the microphones in the room, if you're for the planning council members, just make sure that you hit the button to turn the microphone green so that everyone online can hear you also. Otherwise, they won't hear you. Thank you. Thank you. So today's agenda, as you'll recall, is that we had subject matter expert presentations for affordable housing September 12th and 26th, and then resiliency planning and sea level rise on October 17th. So today, that will be the focus, the 2 focus topics for your directives to staff to begin drafting policy updates and changes, and really working directly with those experts in the community on drafting those updates. Overview, just a quick overview of planning and development in Broward County, just to kind of get us to where we're starting today. Here's 2024 Broward County. You know, oftentimes we do forget that, I already screwed up. So we'll just go back to that for a second. 2024, we're primarily built out, but we're going to look at some graphics of what we're anticipating for population growth, which is really why we're still talking about changes to the county plan. So population projections, these next couple of slides are courtesy of Joe Sisodia from the county's urban planning division. They manage the population projections. So what we're anticipating by 2050 is anywhere from 294,000 additional residents. It could be as high as 500 or 600,000 residents. But Broward County is almost built out. So this is a graphic of vacant developable land in Broward County, just to give us an idea of where we're looking at for vacant land. That doesn't include redevelopment opportunities, but just vacant land.
Just vacant land.
Afraid to talk. So here's the future land use designation map. And what I want you to note on here is nearly 65% of the land in Broward County is designated residential. So the remaining of those uses are non-residential uses such as commerce, activity center designations, community use, rec and open space. But don't forget that 2/3 of Western Broward County is designated conservation. So always important to remember that is that's the highest percentage of land use that we actually have in the undeveloped area. So we're going to get right into just the 2024 highlights as they were supported by the steering committee. And today like I said, we're focused on affordable housing resiliency planning. So this isn't everything. These are just the pieces that we're talking about today to kind of give you that format. So what we've been directed to staff is we'll be looking at the highlighted regional issues section, which includes these topics: climate change, redevelopment, transportation, natural resource protection, housing affordability, disaster planning, renewed intergovernmental partnership. I think the most important thing to remember about transportation and affordable housing is these are things that affect all of these topics. So when we're looking at the highlighted regional issues, there's going to be impacted by each of those topics. In the policy section, directly related to affordable housing, considering expansion of additional policies to memorialize single occupancy residential density calculations. So this is the idea of how new construction could be 10 sleeping rooms that share a kitchen and living facilities, and how does that count towards density, and how do we promote that or allow that within the county plan? So you've already agreed to that idea. These are all things that you've already directed and agreed to. The update to the policy section, including all of the affordable housing policies, which is 216.2, 3, 4, and 5. 216.2 is for land use plan amendments, and really what we would be considering there is an update of the in lieu of fee reference in the administrative rules document to be consistent with what's required by 216.4, which is the rate of around $10,300 that will increase annually from there on. So considering that. 3, 4, and 5 are all incentive-based policies that you're familiar with, but can we examine those for additional densification opportunities for that? And 216.5 is specifically was adopted last year, and right now it's limited to ownership of county, school board, or municipal-owned land within its jurisdiction for affordable housing opportunities on community-based land. Could that be expanded also? This is just a comparison. This is a good place to show these maps. The map on the left is what came out of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. It's very similar to the map from 216.4. Those are municipal redevelopment areas identified for 216.4 for additional densification opportunities. And like I said, really it's just to show the similarity of the identified target areas along arterials and transit corridors. The next part of the policy section that we're talking that you've directed us for is the additional policies for anything climate resiliency, adaptation action areas, priority planning areas section to take into account the county's new vulnerability study will be coming online shortly and that they've been working on for the last year and a half. Updating the environmentally sensitive land section to address any conflicts with the code of ordinances and processes. So some of these are more like housekeeping, and some of them will be just fully updating or seeing what should be included in the county plan. In the permitted uses section, this was an idea that had come out of the council earlier this year, consideration of additional affordable housing opportunities on lands designated recreation open space. And the idea behind that is to be structured like the recreation open space, permitted use for community uses and for like fire stations and utilities on parks. So perhaps taking a portion of any land designate that as long as the city continues to meet the open space requirement. A redirection of the dashed line category, which was developed in the 1970s, was really for planned unit developments. A lot of them were around golf courses, and we've seen an evolution of the use of that tool. So perhaps we're memorializing that in the county plan to have additional tools for additional density opportunities for affordable housing and density. So really, I think when we're talking about affordable housing and density, some of that could include and would include market rate, but that's consistent with the Affordable Housing Master Plan recommendations. This recommended practice is this is something that's in the recommended practices section, which is it's a strong should section of the plan, but I think it's time to transition some of those things out of the shoulds more into the shall and promoting those opportunities. So here we have, could there be additional intensity incentives for non-residential uses? And that really falls on the local government, but promoting that, especially when there's preservation of tree canopy, green roofs, cool pavements, things that are, really promoting resiliency planning. Natural resource map series, some of this is just a cleanup to any properties that have been developed and need to be removed from maps, examining those sorts of things, updating the plains map, the floodplains map to add the coastal storm area. So these are some kind of housekeeping ideas. And then in the administrative rules document, which you're aware is the implementation document, interpretation document for the Broward County Land Use Plan. There's about 3 things in there that we've identified that could be beneficial for affordable housing. One is the consideration of expansion of mixed-use residential to include both horizontal and vertical integration of retail and office uses. Right now, the rules say that if you're over 25 units per acre, it has to be incorporated into the structure. It's, I think, an expansion that could be beneficial to the local governments. Consideration of additional platting exemptions, specifically for affordable housing, and you'll see that actually throughout the comments that we'll get to just in a minute. It's a constant comment that we receive. What can we do for affordable housing via the platting process? Which that's not the countywide platting authority. We don't manage the code, but there are some things that we can work in for platting to address that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, reconsideration of the voluntary buyout amount for affordable housing to mimic policy 2.16.4. Just a little bit more detail on that. When that rule came into play, it was $1 per square foot. So that was the buyout. So a lot of times, if you're talking about Parkland, it might be $3,000 or $4,000 per unit to buy out. But oftentimes, when you're talking about multi-residential, it's a much lesser amount per unit. And I think there should be consistency amongst the policies and the rules for that. So that would be on our proposed list also. So for the affordable housing discussion, I'm just going to dive into, I'm going to start with the kickoff meeting comments, and then we'll get to the subject matter expert kind of recommendations. So at our kickoff meeting, some of the affordable housing comments related to should Live Local Act authorization, should that be in the Broward County Land Use Plan? I have opinions about that, but this is just a list of the comments that were received about affordable housing. There was a comment to consider the elimination of the in lieu payment for policy 2.16.4, known as the Geller policy. So right now, you can either build affordable housing and residential is permitted by right, or you can buy out per total number of dwelling units. And I thought it was interesting that there was a comment that the in lieu of payment should be eliminated. Ensuring, some of these are just about ensuring that long-term neighborhood residents are not displaced due to redevelopment. So that we have protective policies in our plan. I'm not sure how far we can go with that, but it's certainly the sentiment could be in the plan. Considering the conversion of non-residential uses such as offices and hotel units to residential units. It's a really interesting idea, especially for hotels, because I think we'll see some of those used as studios. We've seen some of them used for student housing in the past, which doesn't count against residential density. But I think that there could certainly be future uses of that conversion. So how does that fit into land use? The September 11th Broward workshop, we had a meeting with the Broward Workshop Group about affordable housing, and the three takeaways for me for that, again, additional platting exemptions for affordable housing, continued examination of additional residential by right, which is consistent with what we talked about from your established framework. And then there's a school impact fee reduction and exemption for affordable housing, increasing that threshold, which obviously is not part of the Broward County Land Use Plan, but is certainly something that we would pass on to the school board. And I know that Dr. Zeman is very aware of this issue and is very interested in that. The September 12th and 26th subject matter expert presentations, I think, what was really great about that is a nice mix of the private side and the public side, and kind of hearing, the struggles that the private side's going through, and then really where the public side's coming from for those struggles. So this is a list, I think, of the takeaways from those two meetings combined. Again, additional platting exemptions for affordable housing. So that's, certainly something that's on the radar and on the framework. Elimination of the plat note amendment process. That's the Broward County Land Development Code. Joe Sosodi is here today, and we had the good fortune of her being in the room the day that comment, and generally I would say she agreed. But whatever we can do to work with the county staff to streamline that or eliminate it. Consideration of parking reductions. The note is local governments. It's a struggle because it's something that local governments deal with every day. We don't deal with site planning from a land use perspective, but the local governments, this is one of those places where you see really how do you balance the private and the public sector for that. Continued examination of additional residential by right and other permitted uses. So I think you're hearing some common themes already addressed in your framework. It keeps coming up at meetings. So that would certainly be a directive for staff. Consideration of an increase to the residential density cap for affordable housing. Right now, for bonus density, policy 2.16.3, that's limited to 50 units per acre. The community incentive, 216.5, is also limited to 50 units per acre. Is it appropriate to consider raising that cap? Should it be for every residential category? Should it be for all of that? Should it be for bonus density? Should we consider a release of the cap for affordable housing or for density in general? And that's a pretty big issue that I think is going to, but I think it's better to maybe keep it a little bit narrow, but really think about it as we're coming up and developing policy and permitted use ideas. School impact fee reductions and exemptions, again, School Board of Broward County decision and how they're going to work with that. The consideration of mixing income requirements. So that would be, right now, we see a lot of commitments for 15% or 20% moderate affordable housing, which is up to 120% of the median income. So we've heard some ideas of should be required. For example, if you have 12, you could have 12% moderate income, but 3% low or very low to start mixing in the lower median income scales of up to 80% and up to 50% with that moderate income. And that would come into play for bonus densities, for example, the Geller policy. It could be part of your buyout piece for the administrative rules for land use plan amendments. If they're making a 15% commitment, at least 3% of it would need to be low or very low, or some percentage. This is just an example. This is not it. Consider modification of policy 2.16.4 regarding non-residential thresholds for developments over 5 acres, and eliminate number 9, which is really the site planning specific piece of that. And that came from one of our subject matter expert presenters from the city of Pompano Beach, and they actually gave us some text that's worked into your framework document. And I think, those are both worthwhile or worthy conversations of continuing to have. So, do you want to talk about affordable housing, or
Yes,
do you want to move on? I'm so sorry. Let's go back. Where do you want me to go back to?
Well, why don't we start by going back? You said you have some thoughts on the first issue.
Okay.
So why don't you tell us your thoughts?
So I'll start with August 15th, and just really Live Local Act. From a staff perspective, that's a statutory, it's statutory. It's going to time out in already 8.5 years. I don't know that we want to represent that in the county plan. I just don't think it's permitted. We're here to assist local governments if they need assistance, that whatever we can do. I think it's just better. I think it's better off to leave it off the plan. Also,
I agree.
our incentive-based
We can scratch that one. We can scratch that one right now.
We can scratch that. I made my case, but I want to add that our incentive-based policies are actually more liberal and can do better things. So
Completely
I think they
agree.
provide other opportunities. So that's great. We'll scratch that.
Thank you.
The consideration of the in lieu of payment for policy 2.16.4, which we've seen a couple of times through the later slides. It's definitely worthwhile of having the conversation. As we adopt this or move this framework forward, we can put some notes on to add to the local government. I would like more input from that. And of course, the author, Senator Geller, I think probably would like to have some sort of say in anything related to 2.16.4, whether it's this elimination of the in lieu of fee, modification of the site plan, whichever it is. So we'll make sure that we call attention to that, and send it to his office.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there any discussion on that? I think- Please.
Yeah.
Good enough, or do I need to move this closer?
You're perfect.
Okay, good.
Put your glasses on.
I'm going with my cats. I don't think it would be a good idea to remove it or to eliminate it. You need to have options. And I think one thing that people may not recall is where the money goes to. So while we're trying to make sure that we have more people move into the city or our cities that can afford their homes, some of the issues that our housing stock is having is the ability to repair, ability to have insurance, ability to do certain things where this money comes in and helps our cities to be able to assist those residents in need. So we're not having those residents be forced out of their home where they then will have to try to find housing somewhere else. And so I do not support removing the elimination in lieu of payment. I do not support eliminating in lieu of payment.
Further discussion? Dr. Zeman?
Yeah, I mean, to the mayor's point, this is a system. It's like a balloon. You push on this side and it sticks out over here, right? I feel the same way about impact fees, school, seat assessments and the like. We have to make sure that we build a better county, which is a collection of 31 municipalities all formed together into one big organization. We have to be, I think, thoughtful about the impact on city revenue. I do, though, think Senator and Commissioner Geller ought to participate in our discussions about that, largely because the design of that is far greater, as is his knowledge, than what's actually written in the county code. And so he's a wealth of knowledge. He could definitely assist us on, thinking about it. Instead of elimination, maybe there's actually an increase. I will over and over again ask us to be bold about building a better Broward County, because when you give people options, you get outcomes that are economically satisfying to them. But I want solutions that are community satisfying, not individually satisfying. And sometimes when you give people choices, you're driven to the marketplace solution, which is what we have right near. After about 120 years of intense development, we ended up with the Broward County that we have today because of the economics of private property, and because we bowed down and gave everybody the rights to do it except for basically eminent domain. And so now going forward, I think we have to think very much about, with sea level rise, with the future of changes, how do we win the battle with other areas for people to move here, for a balance of people to move here, and for us to win that battle so more people want to come here and build a better county. Because I think right now we're not at that point. So that's why I'm looking forward to this work very much.
Great.
I just want to add about the in lieu of fee. So when we did the survey earlier this year, it was around $23 million already that was estimated to be collected. And the county, Ralph Stone's group, the Housing Finance, will receive at least half that money to be able to provide matches for the 4%, 9% credit. So I think it's a very valuable tool in providing the matching funding and opportunities. That wasn't anticipated, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think we'll see that continue to grow. The monies haven't been collected yet because those are projects that are committed to, but that haven't come online. But I think they'll start seeing that money probably in the next 2 years.
Thank you for the add. Councilmember Horland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, because everybody's eloquently stated my feelings on this, I don't want to remove that option. I think that it's something that you would box cities in too much. We need that option on the table for all the reasons that my colleagues have stated, so I concur about not eliminating that.
Thank you. Ms. Blake Boy, you said you would like to get more feedback on this item from the municipalities. Do you still want to do that after hearing from the board?
No.
Great. So we'll scratch that one too.
No feedback. I'm just kidding. For anyone listening, just joking.
Excellent. Next item.
Like I mentioned, that long-term neighborhood residents, really an issue of gentrification, which I think we have some policies in the plan, but I think staff, we could examine to see if there's anything we could strengthen there about, protection of single-family neighborhood opportunities. I think we have some language. We do, not I think. We have language in there. I think it could be modified or strengthened to address that if it doesn't already. Considering the conversion of non-residential uses such as offices and hotel units to residential uses, I think that's very worthwhile of how that could fit into land use and zoning. So I would like to pursue any ideas we could come up with that.
Agree. Totally agree.
Additional platting exemptions, I think that's a message that we heard throughout. We certainly, staff's always looking for additional platting exemptions. We actually moved that to the administrative rules document a couple years ago so that it doesn't have to go through the statutory process. So that's something that can be accomplished very quickly with just a hearing at the Planning Council and County Commission. So we'll certainly pursue that if there's no objection to that.
Excellent. Members, if you have any thoughts, just please jump in.
Additional opportunities for residential by right, absolutely. That's consistent with your framework also. School impact fee reductions, that's something for forward to the school board. Platting exemptions again, plat node amendment process, parking reductions, those are, yes?
No.
No.
Mayor Gomez.
No.
Mayor
Yes,
Gomez.
no.
Thank you. No to parking reductions. The reality is this: we've been building with parking reductions, and we're finding that in the attempts to have people get out of their cars. But it is Broward County. It is Florida. It is not New York City. It is not Paris. It is not San Francisco with a trolley. We don't have that ability, and we are forcing people to double park their cars. More cars are ever more apparent in people's homes. Even the Uber drivers have a car. They have to park it somewhere. And I think that we have done a disservice to some of our communities by making it where there are no parking structures. And also for some of our mixed-use communities, we also hurt our businesses because people don't want to come where they can't park. And so I think we have to be more mindful of cars are here to stay. We need more mass transit. We need to figure out how to make it where it all works. But squeezing the parking reductions and making them through this be reduced will only hurt the cities and their ability to plan properly for their cities.
Thank
I
you,
have no
Mayor.
opinion, right?
Councilmember Horland.
Again, I concur. We've gone through the same thing in our municipality where we've had some projects that's been reduced, and I don't think it's been terribly successful. I think to your point, I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm also a realist, and people in South Florida don't want to get out of their cars. I don't think that at this time we have a mass transit system that serves all the needs of the people. So while we're looking to put some of our development on those transit lines, I know there was talk when Pompano Beach was here about Primo. I think that it's aspirational at this point, and I am not in favor of planning our development in the city based upon the potential of what Primo could bring to our community. So I agree. I don't want to see it in the plan.
Thank you. How would we actually do, Dr. Zeman, did you ever hand up over there? It's hard for me to see the, I'll let you go first, go ahead.
I appreciate the municipal input on this, and I would just add that that's given current technology. And technology is changing dramatically in this regard. We will have autonomous vehicles within 10 years driving on the roads in Broward County. We're building housing that should last 50 to 75 years. So we just have to be prepared for that, even if we don't put it into this, particular plan for the next 7 years. All the things you said are true, and it's all based on current technology. The technology is coming. It is not drawing board technology. It's proven technology. Autonomous cars are safer than human-driven cars. And as long as that continues to be the case, there's going to be a press to do that. What's cool about that is it also dramatically reduces traffic. So there will be houses in the future that have no garages and have no cars, and people will be picked up, and they'll be picked up with other people in the cars, and there'll be fewer cars on the road across the board, and there'll be less need for roads and all kinds of things. So there's a better world coming transportation-wise. It doesn't all look like buses and metro trains. It looks like a combination of a lot of other things if you talk to Greg Stewart. But I think we have to be aware that there are some predictable things that are happening, like water rise, and there's other predictable things that are happening, like technological change. And the next generation does not want to own cars. And we got to be careful about that, because if they want it and it's technologically available, those are the two conditions to make things happen.
Good thoughts. I appreciate everybody's comments. I have a question, Ms. Blake Boyd. What we're looking at here is, how would we even do that? This is a
No.
local government.
Yeah, it's a local government comment, so this is something we move forward. I just didn't want to interrupt the conversation, so.
I should have interrupted, because I actually was going
So the things that have notes next to them like that are things that really the plan doesn't have. We don't, we don't do building height, we don't do bulk and form, we don't do parking. So that's something, from my perspective, that we would
Ms.
share
Blake
with
Boyd,
local
it's my
governments.
job to interrupt, not yours. So you did fine. I should have interrupted earlier, because I knew what your comment was.
So that's something that I think we share with the local governments. They have, access to all this information. It's posted online. And then I think at the end of BrowardNext, or in the middle, we have like a list of ideas for suggestions for local governments.
And I think we're going to get into some of this too with the multimodal conversation, with what we're taking on.
Yep.
So we're going to continue this conversation. I happen to have a hybrid opinion about this whole thing, because I do think there's going to be many changes that we can't even foresee, as Dr. Zeman talked to. And I think we have an aging population that don't drive. I think there's consideration to be given. That's all I'll say at this point. So-
I think like in the recommended practices, which aren't requirements of the plan, there's something that are promoted. Perhaps it's something that's focused on technology, like future technology, and supporting, like the county land use plan supports it. And we generally keep those policies for county facilities and county-owned lands. They stay focused on that. generally, but that's something that could be a recommended practice. It's not something that like I said, that the plan can.
I think it's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Okay.
Excellent.
So we'll move on. So.
Thank you.
Again, additional residential by right and permitted uses, you've already, given us the go-ahead on that. Consideration of a residential density cap, I think planning council staff should bring forward a couple of options for that.
Absolutely.
One, increasing the overall cap or limiting to residential. So I think, when we start drafting, may have like a menu of things to choose from, and give further direction for moving forward to public hearing. School impact fees, not us. Consider mixing income requirements. I think that's certainly something that, as we look at densification opportunities and commitments that are made, staff should come up with some recommendations for that, because I think that is going to be the future of densification. When those commitments are made right now, for county amendments, it's up to 120%, which means they could come down from it. But I think we're going to start seeing a need for a commitment for some of those units at a lower level.
I think the key word in there is requirements.
Right. And then 216.4, we've already talked about. And with that moves us to resiliency and sea level rise.
Excellent. Further comments on affordable housing?
I just have one, Chair.
Dr. Zeman.
It's essential that we think and do whatever we can to support this. But every time I hear affordable housing, I think about kind of the steps of housing rather than just affordable and then workforce. And one of the things I worry about is if we have the opportunity to talk about a distribution of housing rather than just affordable or workforce housing, it would satisfy me a lot more. Because the problem we have isn't just getting people to come and live in affordable housing. It's dealing with the economics of how do I make the next step? How do I go from a $300,000 or $400,000 apartment or townhouse that's for sale, a condo, to a small single-family townhouse maybe that's $600,000 or $700,000, and eventually move into a house as I get older and have more kids that's bigger and more expensive. To me, that's a lot more satisfying than just a set of rules about the lowest band of housing, which I agree is essential. I'd love to work on that. But I'd like to learn more from staff about how do we incentivize kind of a distribution of housing rather than just the lowest. What I'd hate to do is promote the lowest and we solve the affordable housing. And what we have is, the big sandwich problem, which is everybody now can afford to live here at a reasonable income, but they can't ever move to a single-family home, which are all, in too many neighborhoods are all point houses, as in it's 1 point something or 2 point something to move up. How do you go from 300,000 to 2.5 average if you don't think about that mix in the middle? The staff may come back to us and tell us that problem's been solved a million times, but I still feel like that's worth at least learning more about.
Thank you. I do think that the county plan and the framework that you've created, talking about densification isn't restricted to affordable housing. Talking about, moving the needle on density caps, all of those things together, even though the affordable housing master plan's an affordable housing master plan, a lot of it's really about creating density opportunities. We're obviously focused on affordable housing because I think it's crisis, catastrophe, what do we need to do? But I think altogether, these things are going to create a diversity of opportunities, whether it's converting an office building or, creating opportunities for that. So that's certainly something that we would take into account as part of the considerations and policy ideas that we bring forward.
Thank you.
That's a good comment, Dr. Zeman. Thank you. And it really goes back to what I've been kind of preaching is this, mixed income approach to what we're doing. So
need it.
I think we're looking at that, and I think if there's any more suggestions that staff may have, happy to hear them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're not limited to just what's in this framework. I mean, I think that we're going to continue to see the conversation grow, and as we draft things and craft things and continue to be in the community and receive comments, those will always be part of the document.
Yeah, there's a whole outreach portion, again, that we've talked about, we've seen on our line, that we're gonna, get feedback from municipalities, from stakeholders, so this process is gonna take a
Right,
little
we're
time.
starting to get inquiries about sending emails and ideas that way. So I think we're starting to pick up some steam on that.
I'd like to, before we move on to resiliency and sea level rise, I just want to take time to thank our subject matter experts who came out and
Oh, yeah.
did such a fantastic job. And staff for putting everything online so everybody in the county can take a look at it, see what's important to our subject matter experts, what's important to us, and what's important to you as a staff. So I think you guys have done a fantastic job, and I just want to put on the record that we are very fortunate to have folks in this county that step up and immediately answer the call and your call when you say we need some help, and they step in and do it. So thank you for that, and I feel the same way about our resiliency and sea level rise subject matter experts. They were excellent. So with that, I'll turn it back over
Thank
to you,
you.
Ms.
And
Blake Boyd.
I would just add to that, we've gotten some good feedback. I was at the MPO for a meeting yesterday, and it's nice because other agencies are sharing, also, with some of their board members and their staffs to take the opportunity. So people are tuning in, outside of the constant contact. It's becoming more available, and people are viewing it. And it's nice because you can watch parts of it or all of it, and then all of the PowerPoint presentations are on there too, if you want to steal slides or information. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So the resiliency and sea level rise subject matter expert presentations, that I felt like it was a challenging day, right? Because it was 3 hours, it was solid, because we had backed up out from the week before due to the anticipated storm. And so it was a little bit out of order, from what we had anticipated. We had anticipated the kind of the land use policy and regulatory side the first week, and then kind of these different ideas the next week, but we started with the different ideas and then ended with the regulatory. But I think it all worked out fine, and I think, in the flow of things, there were so many interesting ideas. So what we did for these recommendations are pulled directly from the presentations that were made that day, and combining some of the ideas that we heard. These are a little bit wordier for me, so I'm going to just try to hit the highlights, and then maybe if you want to discuss each one as we go instead of me going through it, okay. Okay, and then what I would also say, especially for resiliency and sea level rise, is whatever the directive is for our staff, we are going to be working closely with the county staff and other agencies to come up with these drafts, because we can't do this on our own, because a lot of this is over my head. It's just kind of like you're a little bit dangerous. I'm a little bit dangerous. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but we're really going to be relying on the experts to get these ideas crafted. And from our staff's perspective, will it work in the county plan? Because some of these ideas, it's going to be similar to what we're talking about with parking reductions, where it's going to be more appropriate for local plans and local codes for local codes. But we, I think, need to craft something to alert local governments to these ideas and how they can work those into their plan.
I agree. It goes both directions too, because it's also regional in nature. So you're going to be
Right.
talking to our counties and other folks, what they're looking at, our surrounding neighbors. So this is a challenge, and we're going to get a lot of feedback on this item. But you're right. I think we all know a little bit about a lot of things here, but we're going to need the experts to help us out. So it's a great
Right.
point. Please.
Okay, so policy protection consideration. So this is really, you may recall Dr. I always just stick with Rode Barbarigos.
Great guy, Landoff.
Landoff. We'll call him Landoff. This is the idea of the green-gray, do we start with the natural, go to the harder techniques for resiliency planning. And I think that doesn't just, that may just not just be the shorelines, but kind of including those concepts in the plan. In his specific presentation, we're talking about wave energy and the prevention of erosion. But you see the translation of some of that onto land when you're talking about alternative parking lot ideas, right? So to create the area to create drainage opportunities. So that's our first bullet point. I think it's something that it could be a recommended practice because a lot of this is going to fall into the local codes. So this is something that I would foresee for that, but I think it's something really important for consideration. And a lot of times those recommended practices will move their way into the policy section.
I agree with you. Even again, this is going to be more of a local issue. We should have some directional advice for our municipalities.
Protection of existing affordable housing, Dr. Landoff had some interesting slides about retroactive dry and wet proofing. I don't really know how that falls into the county plan, but again, this is something I think that we could consider the concept for a recommended practice. Okay. Encouraging local government codes to incentivize redevelopment with resiliency criteria, consider road designs that go beyond the FDOT Green Book. Consider adoption of stormwater regulations. This was from Ms. Didi. She's the local land use attorney. This is from her presentation, and I thought it was really great because I do just want to share, and I said it this day, without her participation with the city of Dania Beach, the 4,000 units that were proposed there as part of the county plan, we would probably still have that application just kind of waiting for some sort of resolution. So I think her solutions are very, they're forward thinking, and it's how you get local governments to be able to move to that resiliency planning, to continue to plan for redevelopment. So I think there's pieces of this that could go in the policy section, and it's just how we format that. And I think that this is like an initial conversation I would want to have with Dr. Gerardo of how we kind of work it in. So a lot of these, I don't think you'll see them separately. You may see them kind of all combined and coming together. But I think certainly the county is in a position. We've been very forward thinking about, land use changes and kind of what's the next step on that is my takeaway for this whole section.
Excellent. Mayor Gomez.
So I'm mostly fine with this, other than the incentivize. No problem incentivizing, but who's helping us incentivize? Where's the money coming from? Especially when tax dollars keep getting diminished from cities, and we don't know what's coming up on the next, what happens with the ballot initiative that's coming right now. All the time, it's the cities that get the reduction. You don't see others, forgive me, but you don't see the school board, you don't see the county, you don't see the water management district, you don't see the hospital district getting reductions, you see the cities getting the reductions. And then if the cities dare to increase their millage rate by a 0.0001, who gets it, right? When it's hard enough to have some redevelopment going on without residents being upset with it if they don't fully understand or desire it to happen, to then say that we need to use more tax dollars to incentivize or grant money to incentivize, we need help with the incentivize package if it's money.
So no unfunded mandates or incentives.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
a very short
That's
way to
my
say it, but in
takeaway.
case anybody's listening and not knowing where it's coming from,
Right.
I want to make sure it's very clear what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that cities don't want to do things, but the more that we get cut off of our millage rate, the more that we get cut down from our ability to do things, the less ability we're able to have those firefighters, have the clean water services done, have the park and recs being taken care of, having security and safety. So that's just where my issue comes from.
Thank you, Mayor. School Board Member Zeman.
One of the nice things about an effort like this, I think, is that there's an opportunity to identify challenges and potential solutions. One of those challenges is that there are some municipalities that are going to be winners and some that are going to be losers in a conversion to any new 7-year plan, right? And in some sense, the county has the opportunity to share revenue across winners to losers, so there's a little bit more of a balance. And so that's another thing I think we could talk to a commissioner like Senator Geller or others about, which is how do we try and make sure that the opportunities for redevelopment, whether it's about affordable housing or stormwater mitigation or water mitigations and the like, could be incentivized across municipalities rather than just within municipalities. Part of that is a challenge because the gain to many good things that happen are, in fact, within the boundaries of the municipality. Like if you do something well and property values go up, so does tax revenue, unless you are forced to lower millage rate to keep it the same. And so to me, it's just kind of another interesting systems question, which is, what is it that we ought to incentivize across municipalities, and what are the things that we say, no, those are things that are going to benefit, within those boundaries, and so you got to, try and work on those things on your own, and we just pass, kind of guidelines. But I'd like to learn more about that so that we can get to the better solutions. That's particularly important, I think, in affordable housing. Where Tommy lives and where I live, the opportunities for affordable housing, I think, are virtually zero. Like long-term even, it's going to be tough. But there are other areas that are either undeveloped or going through development for which affordable housing is just much more feasible. And so, given that we have the opportunity to think as a county rather than 31 municipalities, I think it'd be interesting to think more about the incentives across municipalities in order to get to a better Broward County.
Thank you, Dr. Zeman. Any further discussion? Okay. No unfunded mandates, that's all.
Right, no unfunded mandates or incentives.
Fund us.
Fund us and we'll be happy to help.
Well,
Fund us, right, and.
I don't agree with that.
And the county
I
plan.
agree with unfunded mandates, unfortunately.
Just to clarify.
And I'm
the-
a victim of them.
There's no,
But the thing is also keeping in mind that one of the issues is we have many of our homes, single-family homes, they are homestead protection. So it doesn't matter that the property values are going up, we're still capped.
So just to bring this to conclusion, I think we need, more information. We're going to go out and try to get information on these things with good recommendations. I think the way it reads right now, I'm okay with going out and exploring more of that. Yeah. Just exploring.
right, and I think that's when we're going through, there's 2 more pages of slides for resiliency. When we go through each of these, when I look at the county plan, I don't see, each of these being a policy, but I
Right.
see the concept behind it and the county supporting resiliency planning. The next bullet is really like priority areas for development and redevelopment. Maybe they're areas of lower flood risk connected to desired infrastructure and community services. There are things about, when you're adding density, whether it's market rate or affordable housing, ensuring that we're not putting residents at risk in the future and how that works into the plan. And that's kind of that's my, I think, big picture for each of these bullets is, how do we continue to grow and accommodate future growth and do it in a way that's responsible and is not putting residents and businesses at risk, if we can make a decision about that.
Yeah, these are all ideas on a page right now. I mean, this is what it comes down to. There's not a policy in here yet.
Right.
Fair point.
So one of the final bullet on this page is really related to the reviewing of land use plan amendment proposals. Right now, all land use plan amendments are reviewed to see if they're in a priority planning area, which is at risk for sea level rise in the year 2070. And we'll actually be updating that map. That data gets updated every 5 years. So this would be adding an additional layer to land use plan amendment proposals, which is completely appropriate because, as you're aware, land use plan changes are legislative. So, the policies that support them and don't support them, it's very helpful making recommendations and when you're making a decision about moving forward. So I can see an expansion of an existing policy for that. I'm getting the thumbs up, so when I get the thumbs up out of the corner of my eye, I think it's okay to move on.
And I
So
keep
he's the
looking
only
side to
one,
side.
right? So okay,
I'm smiling.
you are smiling, and those pumpkins are your glowing.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah. So, green streets requirements. This is a really interesting concept because when I first heard that, I was thinking Andrews Avenue type roads, right? Because there's a proposal for like one-way pairs in downtown Fort Lauderdale. But this is really related to neighborhoods and creating opportunities in neighborhoods. So hopefully there's something we can work into the plan, I think, to support this. Because in areas like where there's planned unit developments, kind of one way in or one way out, this could be something that probably residents would not be fans of initially, but it would move them so much forward for resiliency planning, especially when it's a neighborhood that is subject to flooding, and we're not even talking about tidal flooding. So I think there's an opportunity there to kind of think about green infrastructure in the county plan, even if it's a recommended policy. So I think we can anticipate an idea coming forward for that. Incentives for property owners to convert impervious areas to pervious areas. That's really something that I think we would suggest to the local governments to encourage from that perspective. On-site stormwater management and storage capacities. I think that there could be room in the county plan for something like that, but again, that's something that's really going to be at the site planning level. So how do we encourage resiliency planning? And that's why I think so many of these will be kind of worked into bigger policy ideas, but trying to be supportive of those and promote them. And obviously we already have the climate change action plan, the regional climate action plan. As I said, for land use plan amendments, those are both reviewed also besides the priority planning area map. So we're creating the tools to make land use decisions based on this, and I think that should be the focus for resiliency and sea level rise policies and recommended practices. Green development.
Agree.
Thank you. Green development incentives. I actually have to read this. So additional density bonuses for enhanced stormwater management or green infrastructure. This kind of goes along with other ideas that we've talked about for bonus density. So how can that be worked into the plan? Because that could be additional residential density in these kind of like smarter areas that we talked about. Discouragement of large surface parking lots. So I think that, again, that's going to be a local issue. But I will say from a redevelopment perspective, that's what we've been seeing the past several years. I would say the past 10 years. It started really in Plantation with the idea of elimination of surface parking lots, creating other opportunities on the site. And then obviously you would keep your drainage or however those things work. So we're going to see more but better and use of those. So I think that that's been the trend that we've been seeing, is the elimination of that besides the discouragement. As we've noted earlier, we don't have that much vacant land left. So I don't know how many new huge surface lots we predict, but I'm sure we can all sit here and think of huge surface lots that exist that are prime for redevelopment, and they're usually along commercial corridors and arterials. So we'll definitely see that. So I think that kind of plays into the discouragement of the existing.
How about we say, thank you, encourage going up versus discourage flat?
Absolutely, right. Encourage it, because you're encouraging redevelopment to create better opportunities, because so many of these parking lots came from the 70s and 80s, right? And they're just development has modernized through the time. So that's going to be part of the redevelopment.
Right, aside from the stormwater issues and drainage, it's the heat island effect that is created with those large surface parking lots. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Very good points. I do think, even though we may not have a lot to say on this, the encouragement idea, putting some ideas in place for your municipalities to look at, is a very good idea.
Excellent. Thank you. Seawall ordinance. This is one of my favorites. Back to kind of unfunded mandates, though, right?
I'll put my glasses on for this one.
Yeah, put your blue glasses on for that. So the current requirement is I think it's by 2035, a 5-foot replacement seawall when you're pulling a permit. This recommendation is recommended to go to 7 feet for flood protection levels. Andy and I had a brief conversation about this, and I'll just say right here, like, I have a personal perspective because of where I live for this, and I'm not even sure about the elevation of our house and kind of how those things work together. But again, like unfunded mandate, right? There's thousands of people that live along these properties, individual property owners, not businesses. And, I think that that's a consideration. The policy exists in the plan today. Should it be modified? I think we would certainly come back to you with some sort of recommendation for that. You may recall during Dr. Hurtado's presentation during this, the difference between the 5 and 7 foot seawall was it was considerable for the preservation and protection for that. So this is certainly something that we will be pursuing, and we'll be making a recommendation unless you tell us not to. But I don't anticipate.
Mr. Morotis, do you want to elaborate a little bit what your thoughts may be on this?
Well, part of this is not much of a comprehensive planning function as it is a regulatory function or imposition on existing properties, which, do that. If it's a planning, it's less planning than an enforcement type of thing. So there's difficulties throughout. There's a lot of issues with it. Obviously, as Barbara said, it's going to be a classic unfunded mandate imposed upon not even governments, on citizens. So there are a lot of action. So obviously, it's important. We know it's an important issue. So how do you do it in a way? Do you encourage it? Do you clearly make it maybe for new developments? But again, that's probably going to be but
Because you have a neighbor's issue.
as to existing, you're going to run into a lot more issues.
I've struggled, I mean, we all agree this is a problem. I struggle with the regulatory notion of this whole idea that I'm not sure what we're gonna put in this comprehensive plan to address this.
No, and I don't, because that's why, and it's careful to say adopt and manage the county seawall ordinance, because that's really gonna be an environmental or regulatory ordinance, and we can have policies dealing with it, but it's hard. And do you phase it in? Do you phase it in? Is there funding sources? It's just.
That's why I asked you to kind of weigh in on this,
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Morris. Thank you.
That's gonna be one of the tricky ones.
Dr. Zeman.
Well, I appreciate that. I will provide a little bit of a political input on this one, which is for people who live on the water, nobody's going to cry that you have to pay for a new seawall. Okay? Second, if Tommy and I live next to each other and I raise mine and he doesn't, now we got a problem because water's going to go over his lower wall into my yard. I just paid, several $100,000 to grow. So this is going to be a good, issue. I don't think it's part of the land use though, other than a recommendation. This is a county commission,
exactly right.
you guys suck it up, Buttercup, and figure out a good answer.
And as far as even, I think,
Glad it doesn't come to the school board.
even as a planning function, it's more prospective or new. It's a lot easier, and you've pointed to one of the main factors for new development. Well, then the county ordinance and then municipalities in turn can regulate it so that first of all everything's the same. And so a new development would have to have that, but how many new developments are there on the?
Right.
So it's just.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Mayor Gomez.
Well, for anybody who knows me from any of the other committees I sit on,
I don't know what you're talking about.
right? Maybe 2 or 3 of them. I'm the crazy canal lady because I think everybody only focuses on the intercoastal. They only focus on the east side. Nobody pays attention to the fact that the west has the Everglades. The west is older in some respects, and the west has a lot of tertiary canals that were created to help the secondary and main canals be built. It is a subject of where transportation goes through and has to be cleaned, and the water does flow out to the Atlantic. It does have an effect, the waves, the erosion, all this kind of stuff, and nobody's paying attention to how to help the residents who are suffering now. It's been an issue. I've been asking to see if there can be some kind of state program that funds it and some local company that can be trusted, 'cause that's the other thing, trusted to fix the canal walls and help the residents, kind of like the sewer to septic. I know I sound like a broken record for some people who have heard this before, to then try to mandate it and creates a problem without there being a solution. when we try to bring in solutions and then be told, oh, we'll have somebody to help you, but it'll be 10 years down the line, will that house go into the canal already? And remembering that the houses that are on the canals affects the streets, it affects the infrastructure, it affects the sewers. Stormwater, all of this kind of good stuff. So we need to also make sure that when we say that rules are going to be contemplated, 'cause I really don't think this goes into this.
Right.
It needs to be mindful of how the rules and regulations are written, and we can't only think about one side of the county, because we're not supposed to be that lopsided.
Very good point. Thank you. Ms. Playboy.
Thank you, sorry. So I, just as a final thought on this, I hear what you're saying and I understand. We do have, there is a policy in the plan, that was adopted in 2019, to address the initial 5-foot. So I think, maybe we'll come forward with either maintaining that policy, not making the change, or we will come up with something, working with, the environmental staff.
Fantastic. Thank you.
The final two bullets, I think, are pretty straightforward. Resilient complete streets design. We have complete streets section in our plan. I think that there's certainly, we can strengthen the resiliency design standards for that. So if I think that's appropriate.
I mean, in the complete streets, we're gonna, again, take on that challenge with the multimodal
Right.
portion of this, so.
Right, and it's, it touches on both topics.
Exactly.
And then the final bullet point related to the subject matter expert presentations is really overlay districts as part of land use development requirements, which we touched on earlier. I think that that's consistent with something we should consider with the plan, whether it's this is where we're promoting additional density up to this, because we know that this area is going to stay dry, isn't part of a heat island, whatever the benefit is there. So I think that that's certainly something that can be, it's going to be transitioned from the recommended policies to the practices to the policies section, and I think be able to be strengthened.
Excellent. Comments?
I have two last slides. This is kind of adjacent to resiliency and sea level rise. And this was, these are from the kickoff meeting comments related to open space. So I always think open space is related, to resiliency planning. And I just wanted to share the feedback, which was interesting, of this continued discussion about local governments not being able to provide 3 acres per 1,000 for their permanent residents. We went through this the past year and a half. It was just adopted over the summer, the update to that section. So there was a request to consider the, continued review of that to try to assist these eastern and central county local governments that may not be able to ultimately meet that, but are trying to provide for population growth. I think it's challenging, but we'll certainly look through the open space criteria for that. And then an interesting idea about shared use paths that are separated from the road, about considering that for open space. And I think that's really more in the western part of the county. That came from the MPO staff, but I think that we'll of course look at that for opportunities for local governments related to that. So I just wanted to mention those because they were adjacent to this topic.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. The final slide, nope. Well, this is the roadmap, but before I get to that, we'll go back to this slide. I just want to talk about the transportation subject matter expert presentations. It looks like we are not going to have a December 5th Planning Council meeting. I have one more week to wait for actually 2 more weeks to see if anything comes back from the state, to see if an item needs a second public hearing. That could trigger the meeting. I'd like to set up the subject matter expert presentations for transportation, invite them as a start date December 5th. I have 2 other dates in December that I could use if no one's available that day. But I'm thinking, I talked to the MPO staff a little bit yesterday when I was up visiting, and there's a little bit of a difference, I think, between affordable housing policy, resiliency planning, and kind of what I anticipate for the transportation experts. The transportation experts, I think, are going to be more focused. Obviously, they can weigh in on the county plan and the policies that tie in, but I think they'll be more focused on kind of primo right? And what this proposed plan is, and kind of getting a visual on that. The MPO, what their long-range plan is, what all of their other planning studies and things that they're pursuing, tying that all into the county plan. And obviously, transportation cuts across everything. Opportunities for affordable or for any housing, not just affordable housing, moving people around the county, people, services, goods, resiliency planning. So we have a shorter list. I think I have 3 or 4 people that we've identified for that. And then if you wanted additional speakers after we had that subject matter expert presentations, you could let me know that wasn't enough. We need more, and then we could kind of go back to see what that is. But that's what we're thinking for the transportation piece.
I think December 5th is a great idea. We'll continue to do that via Zoom for the members of this board, and then via the webcasting like we did before, put it online. So I think that's great. You know, my only concern is we give enough time, because this is a very important item. I mean, this takes everything into consideration. It takes resiliency planning, it takes housing, you know, how we do that, parking. All of these things are encompassed in transportation. That's why I keep using the term multimodal, right? Forms of transit, because it's really, it's a task force. What are we doing with bike lanes? You know, we talk about using parks, how we utilize what we actually have currently. So I don't want to sell ourselves short. I think it's going to be more than 3 subject matter experts, because it's not just, you know, the multiple forms of transportation. It's how we actually encourage, you know, local use at the municipality level too, and then look at some of these things in a regional issue. So let's plan on a couple days for these subject matter experts.
Okay,
My point.
perfect. So I'll start the invitations for December 5th, and then I'll use the second date. And I was talking to the MPO staff yesterday about ideas for other speakers besides, you know, what we had identified. So we'll certainly continue to work on that.
They are going around right now, the MPO, doing outreach regarding their initiative for transportation and their Complete Streets program and what they're trying to do. So they gave us a nice presentation on Monday at our Economic Development Council meeting in Pompano. So I think there's a lot there that they're already a little bit ahead in certain areas, so we'll get some good input from them.
And would you have an objection, because the MPO, really, they have such a breadth of studies and things that they're pursuing? So I talked to Peter Gies yesterday, who's, you know, leading the long-range transportation plan, the MTP, for 2050.
Yes.
So perhaps I can, maybe if we could just have we have a focus on the long-range plan and then other pieces. So maybe he would speak for longer than 20 or 25 minutes. And if there's no objection to that, then I could ask him to expand. And I think that could be helpful on getting the information that we're looking for.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I think it's a really good idea, and all the information that we can get from them. Dr. Zeman?
I would just, Peter's a dream. They're really, really amazing, as is our MPO director. But I might ask if we could focus on technology and innovation.
Yes.
I don't want the 2050, you know, we have 10,000 buses instead of 1,000 buses. You know, I want to learn more about things that we don't know for sure, but things that are at least predictable to happen and what impact that they would have. Because there's clearly some thinkers in the transportation space here and in Europe that are thinking way beyond, you know, more cars and more buses and metros. And some of those ideas are absolutely fascinating. And another thing that's going to be difficult to predict is how long is this work from home going to last? And is there going to be a big swing back or not? And that, to me, is not for certain, but we need to be prepared for that. We want people living in Broward County who can work. That's a big deal if we want to grow smartly. But if we're going to do that, we also have to kind of think a little bit about the work week and whether or not, you know, we've already arrived at equilibrium and it's not going to change, or whether or not there'd be another shift one way or the other.
And I
Very good
think I
thoughts.
would certainly ask the MPO, because they often have presentations on this about the technology, innovation and technology piece of it, to see if they have a recommendation for someone that we could invite.
And if Carla Coleman happens to be listening right now, I'm going to be making a phone call to you to be one of our subject matter experts.
Nice.
Awesome.
She's fantastic at this. I asked her to chair a multimodal task force already, and she's done some really good work for us.
Okay,
So,
great. I'll look forward to the info.
absolutely.
Thanks. With that, this is the final slide, is just really our roadmap, that where we are, and we're kind of between 3 and 4 right now. Steering committee subject matter expert presentation started in September. I think they'll probably finish up by December, so we'll have kind of all of our directions. Obviously, that'll continue with public input also. And I think that for draft comments, documents for comments, we don't have a date for that yet, but I think we can start anticipating some discussion for that February to March-ish.
Wow.
So for draft, before we take it to, I think we can probably reach a public hearing, planning council in June. And if
That's
we
awesome.
don't, everything can kind of move, because we really have this ultimately as adoption by early 2026. So we have room in here for everything, but just a reminder of the roadmap.
No,
Okay.
fantastic job. Member comments? Anything? Anything you like, Michelle?
Anything you want.
I won't read the phone book. Just wanted to thank Barbara for coming to the Northwest Council of Elected Officials that I hosted a couple weeks ago. She did an excellent job. We had a lot of the elected officials, and we had Senator Osgood there, who learned about what we're doing and be able to help spread the word and get more information and just educate the public. So just wanted to thank her for her wonderful time there, more presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And anyone who's watching or listening online, planning council staff is available for any commission meetings, board meetings, homeowners associations, any event that you have, just reach out to us, and, we'll find someone to come talk.
You all are phenomenal about
Thank
that.
you.
I mean, so we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Dr. Zeman?
I would like to stay on schedule.
Absolutely.
One of the values about planning from June backwards is that we pressurize people to come talk, we pressure us to, think, to get to people that we want to talk to in our city and our county, and otherwise to get things done. So I think that it's reasonable to try and at least put best efforts to get done by June. So to the extent that we can participate in longer meetings or more frequent meetings or whatever makes sense, I think the community respects outcomes that are done on time, just for the sake that they got done on time. And so just a quick management thought, if that's all right.
No, it's an excellent thought, and we started with the sunset date in mind.
Yeah.
So that's how we started this.
Amen.
Councilmember Horland, any further thoughts?
Again, it's been said before, but what you and your staff have done, and even if I have not been able to participate in the meeting online while the meeting's happening, to be able to go back and watch those videos has been really valuable and terrific. And I just can't thank the subject matter experts enough. And you think about all the talent we have in Broward County, we can build that better Broward County.
Great. Ms. Blake Boy?
If Mayor Brunson was online, I just wanted to say thank you for attending, and I didn't know if she had anything she wanted to add. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Just
Thank
wanted
you,
to make
Mayor.
sure. I
Anything
think
else,
that
Ms. Ba-
concludes our business for the day.
Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else for the good of the order?
No, sir.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween, happy Thanksgiving,
And I'll-
happy everything, happy Diwali.
And that's a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
Yeah, Diwali's.
We should have that day off from school, don't you think?
Yes, that jacket is fabulous.
It's-